연준의 금리 인하 소식에도 큰 반등을 보여주지 못하는 비트코인. 정말 연말 랠리는 없는 것일까요? 여기 JP모건 수석 전략가 출신이자 이더리움 트레저리 기업 비트마인에서 의장격으로 활동하고 있는 토리가 지금 시장에 대해 설명해주고 있습니다.
6 reasons why I expect stocks to rally in December. The government shutdown's over. We've had a blackout of economic data, and markets don't like the lack of information. That's going to have a restoration of visibility. There's performance chasing. Investors are off sides in November because a lot of funds actually threw in the towel. They just thought the markets made the highs for the year. And already 2025 was the worst year for fund managers, with 78% trailing their benchmark. Stocks got oversold. And I think especially when you look at RSI. This is daily RSI for the S&P year to date. And the daily RSI fell to 35 in November. That's the most oversold it got since the April tariff lows. And as you can see on this chart, once you made those lows on the RSI in April, market began to rally pretty sharply. And lastly, it's seasonal. December usually finishes strong. And given the pullback in November, I actually think December is shaping up to be a good month. The rule of 10 best days states that the S&P makes most of its annual gains in just 10 days. And it means don't time the market. And this year was a really stark example. Since 1928, the S&P's returned 8% a year. Excluding the 10 best days, though, it's minus 13%. That means you missed out on 2,100 basis points if you didn't own the 10 best days in every year. Since 2016, this rule's also held. The S&P's returned 14%. But it's minus 9% if you don't have the 10 best days. That's 2,300 basis points a year. All of the gains basically in the market are made in 10 days. Let's just look at the last 3 years. In 2023, the S&P was up 24%, but excluding the 10 best days, it was up only 4%. In 2024, the S&P was up 23%. Excluding the 10 best days, it was up only 4%. This year, the S&P is up 16%. But if you exclude the 10 best days, you're down 12%. Huge difference. So let's look at those 10 best days of every year. In total, the 10 best days in 2025 were particularly stark, 32%. So you really had to be involved in the 10 best days. But that top 10 day was April 9th, 2025, when the market was up 9.5%. So that was the tariff lows. If you missed that day, you've had a bad year. And excluding the 10 best days, the market's down 12% this year. Okay, so it's the tariff bear market that determined everything. Here's the single best day of 2025 right there, that big candle. And if you didn't own it, by the way, after that day, you also missed out on the best 6-month gain we've seen in more than a decade. Hopefully that makes it clear that you need to own stocks and try not to time the market. Now, when we look at the week ahead, Wednesday is the big day because that's when the Fed makes its December rate decision. A 25 basis point cut is the base case. That number the odds have moved around a lot. But as you can see, Polymarket currently places the odds at 93%.
So when I look ahead at 2026, I think it's a really attractive setup. Monetary policy's been tight for 3 years now. And we're just beginning to get some easing, but we also have a new Fed chair. And I think that the idea is to unleash and improve monetary liquidity. That's a big tailwind. The business cycle has been muted for the last 4 years. The ISM manufacturing, which is a measure of business activity, has been below 50 for 36 months. It's the longest stretch below 50 in the history of the ISM survey. It shows you business confidence has been muted because of inflation and then Fed tightness and then policy uncertainty and tariffs, but that all clears next year. And we know that investors are very skeptical because sentiment remains negative and people talk about an AI bubble, but measurable surveys like AAII show people are negative. And that's a contrarian tailwind because when everyone's bearish and they're sitting on a lot of cash, then if the market moves away from them, they're going to chase that. So I think that that's a formula for that's very supportive of stocks next year.
12월 투자 시장에 랠리가 있을 것이라며 그 근거를 이야기했습니다. 그러면서 결국 투자 시장에서 한 해의 수익 대부분이 단 10일에 집중되고 아직 그럴 만한 시도가 없었다며 이 구간이 결국 올 것이라고 보고 있었는데요. 과연 그건 언제 이루어질지 우선 토리의 이야기를 마저 들어보도록 하겠습니다.
However, the timing is a little uncertain because we're coming off 3 years of really good gains. So I think that the first part of next year, maybe the market has to digest that a bit, but it should play out really strongly for the full year. Crypto's been disappointing the last few months because prices are down a lot. And when prices are down, first of all, we know the mood turns really dark. People get second guess, especially because price is so important as a signal in crypto. And now people are really worried that this is the start of the 4-year cycle of the downturn, which might last a year. So that's at the back of people's minds. But I would say people should be wary that price isn't always signal, because there's times when there's fundamental developments that are really building. I see this in equity markets all the time, while price remains skeptical. I think we're in one of those moments because Bitcoin has become an institutional asset. So that's very different than the last 10 years. Well, really 15 years for Bitcoin. It's for the first time has a different buyer. And the US government just about to finalize the Clarity Act and some action regarding the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. That's a brand new buyer. And on Ethereum specifically, there is a huge runway coming because of stable coins, which is a tokenization of a dollar. But it's just the start, because we know that BlackRock and Robinhood and everyone else wants to tokenize everything on the blockchain. That's a big unlock of activity, which is going to happen regardless of whether prices of Ethereum and Bitcoin aren't going straight up, because these are innovations in financial products. So I'm in the camp that we have not really seen the peak associated with a 4-year cycle. In fact, in some ways, because of muted monetary liquidity and all the suppressed animal spirits, the market's been super concentrated this year. I think that the best prices are going to be seen next year for both Bitcoin and Ethereum. The way this is ultimately proven is if Bitcoin makes a new high before end of January, which I believe will happen. But we did talk about that in the most recent BitMine chairman's message from November, that we looked at things that could explain the 4-year cycle of Bitcoin. In the past, what peaked that explained why Bitcoin was following that cycle. The two things that really explain Bitcoin's price peaks that were not time related, like not just saying the clock, was the copper versus gold price ratio. That makes sense because it's industrial activity versus monetary base. That has always peaked in coincidence with the past peaks of Bitcoin price. But copper to gold has actually been at a low right now, meaning we actually haven't seen copper gold peak. Why is that? I think part of it has to do with stablecoins buying so much gold this year. They are the single biggest buyer of gold. They've driven gold to an all-time high. And that means there's a huge move coming in copper. The second is, then that will mark the Bitcoin peak. The second is the ISM. ISM has always peaked in coincidence with the Bitcoin price peaks in the past. But as I mentioned earlier, ISM has now been below 50 for almost 40 months, the longest stretch in history. Until the business cycle and industrial cycle peak, I don't think Bitcoin's going to peak in price. I'm really looking forward to being at Binance Blockchain Week. It's happening in exactly the place you'd want it to, which is Dubai, where there's so much crypto innovation taking place. But also Dubai is where a lot of AI hyperscaling is going to take place, and even a lot of compute. And we know that crypto and AI are going to start to intersect in the agentic world. So I think it's an ideal place. I think what people are going to hear from us is really this vision of why crypto is entering a much different phase where it's becoming central to the economy. Up until now, Bitcoin and Ethereum and altcoins have all been a story of price, and it's created a lot of wealth, and it's really drawn in a community of dedicated people. but it hasn't created products that have actually worked in the real world. I think that's finally changing. And that's what makes the next 5-10 years so exciting.
톰 리는 비트코인을 신고점 도달 전 단계로 판단하고 있었습니다. 아직 시장에 불신이 가능한 현재, 비트코인을 매수하는 사람들이 점점 기업, 기관 같은 새로운 부류로 변화하고 있다고 이야기하며 앞으로의 상승을 기대하고 있는 듯 했는데요. 하지만 제 채널에 등장하는 전문가들은 대부분 비트코인을 좋게 이야기해야 하는 위치에 있는 사람들이죠. 고객 자금을 굴리고 있거나 회사 자금으로 비트코인을 구매한 사람들이 많기 때문이죠. 시장에는 정답질환 없습니다. 아무리 전문가라지만 남이 하는 좋은 말만 들어서는 투자에 성공할 수 없겠죠. 제가 구독자분들이 객관적으로 비트코인을 판단하실 수 있게 2025년과 2026년 비트코인 전망 자료집을 만들었는데요. 자료집 안에는 국가별 비트코인 보유량과 평단가, 그리고 마이클 세일러가 운영하는 스트래티지 같은 트레저리 전략을 펼치는 기업들의 보유량과 평단가를 한눈에 보실 수 있게 차트에 표시해 두었고요. 날짜별로 비트코인 시장에 어떤 일이 있었는지도 따로 표시해 두어서 추후에 적어도 비트코인에 호재나 악재가 생겼을 때 참고하실 수 있겠죠. 그리고 가장 중요한 건 아직까지 많은 분들이 비트코인의 정확한 가치를 잘 모르시거나 비트코인은 주식이나 금에 비해 변동성이 너무 심해서 사기다 라는 말을 철석같이 믿고 비트코인을 자산 포트폴리오에서 배제하시는 분들이 많더라고요. 객관적인 사실을 살펴보실 수 있게 연도별 주요 자산 상승률과 하락률을 비교 차트로 만들어 두었고요. 받아보시는 방법은 간단합니다. 첫 번째로 구독과 좋아요 눌러주시고 제가 구독자 마크 확인할 수 있게 댓글에 대응이라고 2글자 남겨주시고,
자, 그리고 저희 구독자분들이 가장 많이 신청 주시고 있는 이 엔듀르 자동매매 프로그램 구독자분들 딱 10분께만 더 공유를 해드리기로 했습니다. 자, 이 자동매매 프로그램의 성과는 지금 총 손익이 1000%를 넘었고요. 개인 투자자분들이 가장 못하는 이 우상향하는 자산을 끝까지 끌고 가지 못하는 그런 감정적인 부분을 배제할 수 있는 프로그램입니다. 프로그램 로직은요, 저희 트레이딩팀에서 사용하는 약 13가지의 복합적인 지표를 넣어서요, 속임수를 거르고 상승 추세가 확실하게 나왔을 때만 진입을 하게 되고요. 매수와 매도, 익절과 손절 그 모든 과정이 차트에 이렇게 표시가 되는데, 차트 표시뿐만 아니라 저희 구독자분들이라면 누구라도 이 하단에 거래 목록을 누르시면 이 프로그램이 몇 날 몇 시에 얼마에 사서 얼마에 팔았는지까지 정확하게 보실 수가 있습니다. 자, 프로그램의 성과를 보시면요, 손절은 이렇게 10%, 5%, 많을 때는 18% 이렇게 짧게 끊고요. 수익이 나는 폭을 보시면 8%, 34% 그리고 또 많을 때는 300%가 넘는 이런 수익을 내기도 합니다. 자, 인간의 감정을 배제하고 높게 올라갈 수 있는 종목의 수익은 끝까지 끌고 가기 때문에 이런 좋은 성과가 날 수 있게 되는 거고요. 저희 구독자분들 중에서 본업이 바쁘셔서 좀 투자하시기가 어려운 분들, 꼭 자동매매를 해야 되겠다 하시는 분들만 신청을 주시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 자, 자동매매 프로그램 받으시는 법도 굉장히 간단합니다. 마찬가지로 보시는 영상 하단 더보기란과 고정 댓글에 나와 있는 링크 눌러주시고, 이렇게 구독자 이벤트 신청서에서 3번째에 있는 알파비 노트 자동매매 지표 받기 눌러주시고요. 전화번호 남겨주시고 제출까지 눌러주시면 제가 댓글에서 구독자 마크 확인하고 이 자동매매 지표를 보내드리도록 하겠습니다.